back to Two Dudes Talking Motorcycles, except instead of being two dudes today, we have our friend Emerson here as a guest.
Our first guest.
Our first ever guest. My name is Gleb, and you can follow me on Instagram at GlebLabham.
I'm Mitch. On Instagram, I am Meets to the Beach.
And you can follow the podcast on Instagram at tdtmotorcycles, and you can also send us an email at tdtmotorcycles@gmail.com. Feel free to email us your comments, questions, concerns, feedback, anything you wish, writer stories. We always love hearing from you guys. And like I said, we have our good friend Emerson here on the podcast as our guest because all three of us recently participated in a motorcycle off-road class with Grit Moto Adventures up in Park City, and we all had a pretty awesome time. But before we get into that, we're gonna have Emerson introduce himself and talk about his motorcycling experience so far.
Yeah, so I've been riding motorcycles now for probably 15 years now, I think. First bike was a really crappy 1983 Honda Nighthawk.
Oh, that's cool,
650.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that I like beat up because I wanted a cafe racer. It's not an 80s bike is not a cafe racer. So I hammered knee dents into the tank and stuff like that. It was a total piece of garbage. But yeah, that was the first one that kind of like lit a fire. And so then after that, I was a Ducati Monster, and then another Ducati, and then I jumped up to the Thruxton, and then have another Ducati that I've owned twice now. And now, more recently, I've jumped into the ADV bikes because you guys are terrible influences.
we are bad
KTM
influences.
890 Adventure, right?
Yep. Got
Awesome.
a KTM. It's kind of a little scary, but it's iffy on the brand. But I wanted something that was accessible for me, who's a short rider. And that low seat height and low center of gravity from the saddle tank was just what I needed, basically.
Yeah. Perfect. What got you into motorcycling in the first place?
I mean, it looks cool, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Obviously.
And then, I was 16, 17. I wasn't going to start smoking, so motorcycles were the next coolest thing. Right?
The next.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, if you were smoking and on a motorcycle,
then it would be too cool.
That'd be way too cool.
And I can't handle that. And so, it was just, I don't know, I've always been into cars, going fast, and motorcycles also just made sense after that. So then, the Honda was the first one to like just kind of figure it out.
Very sweet.
And then my cousin knew how to work on Ducatis, all the Desmo valves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he talked me into a Ducati, loved that Ducati, wrecked that Ducati, cracked the case on that Ducati, so that was not fixable. And then bought another Ducati that was a full-on, like their super sport, basically the Matrix bike, the 1979 or 1999 748. And that was great, awesome, fun bike, own it again. But in Indiana, it didn't really make sense. So, because all the straight, boring, flat roads.
Yeah.
Sold that one before I moved out here in Utah. COVID kicked off. Bought the Thruxton.
Nice.
Tons of miles on the Thruxton. The canyons out here are awesome. And then, lower back started hurting a little too much on the Thruxton as I got older. So I was either
KTM.
Yeah. So I was either it was a cruiser, KTM. KTM allowed me to get on more dirt roads, which we have awesome dirt roads out here in Utah. So just made sense to get the adventure bike.
That makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, really.
What has been like your favorite part of motorcycling ever since you started?
That's a tough one. I don't know. It's at the same time it's the solitude of riding a bike.
Yeah.
But then it's also like we met through motorcycling.
Yeah, we all literally all three of us.
Yeah. It was a DGR, so like it's just the solitude of it, but also the community of it is really cool.
We do have a really cool community, especially like our friends and stuff around here.
Yeah.
It's been pretty awesome. I think that's probably one of my favorite parts too, because I've met some really awesome people from riding.
And then obviously you guys have ridden with me. It's also a little need for speed and stuff.
Yeah, you're a fast road.
Emerson is way faster than both of us.
I think it helps. I had that sport bike background.
Yeah.
And that's just transferred into everything else. So.
We'll be cruising up the canyon and stuff, and Mitch and I are just kind of hanging back, and we see Emerson just
It's
carve around the corner and stuff. It's like,
he's gone.
Yep.
We'll see him.
Yeah.
The
rush of it is definitely still a draw for me.
Yeah. Especially after having like some pretty sporty bikes.
Yeah,
like
and I own that
Ducati.
748 now again for the second time. It's still... It's so uncomfortable though, and my back just can't handle it. So it's on the chopping block again to get rid of
really?
it.
Oh man.
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, what would you say drew you to the Thruxton after having your Ducatis and everything? And then I have a follow up after that one as well. But
so I'm a millennial. Cafe bikes were huge.
That tracks.
Absolutely.
That tracks.
And so one of the bikes I forgot that I bought when I was in Indiana was a 1975 CB550.
Oh, okay.
That I chopped the frame up and tried to make a super cool cafe racer. Didn't work out at all. And I realized that I wanted the looks of a cafe racer, but not the maintenance of taking care of an old bike.
Yeah.
And no one does a cafe racer better than Triumph.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, the Thruxton, when those first came out in 2016, I was like, oh, that's a dream bike right there. And then COVID kicked off, prices were low enough, and I'll buy a dream bike, and that bike I'll never get rid of that one.
That's pretty awesome looking bike.
It is.
You removed the airbox on it, right?
Yeah, so I've done tons of.
I
haven't learned my lesson as far as modifying stuff. So I deleted the airbox. It's got a custom battery tray and all that good stuff, and then needed to make it look even more like a classic cafe racer.
Yeah.
And now you have a KTM 890 Adventure. Yep. And what made you want to kind of hop up to an adventure bike? And how do you like the KTM so
Oddly
far?
enough, that was my follow-up question.
Oh, sorry, Mitch.
No, you're good. He's like, oh man, he's got it. Yeah.
Again, so for the last 3 years now, I've been in the summer commuting on the Thruxton, and it just wrecks my lower back. And I don't have any room it was a struggle to take a lunch to work on it.
Yeah.
I had to wear a backpack, which then made it that much worse because I'm leaning on my wrists and everything. So it was between a cruiser, which I'm so glad I didn't do, or an adventure bike. And
we can't be friends if you're on a cruiser.
Yeah, exactly. And it was between that and an adventure bike, and the adventure bike just made way more sense. And since I've bought it, it's so comfortable, and the cruise control just is nice. And
once you have those little creature comforts, it's so hard to
heated grips.
Not have them.
When we rode the DGR earlier this year,
I
was like, oh, this is weird.
Oh no,
I don't like this. I just felt like I was getting ready to fall off the front on the bike. It was
even
that's how I feel every time I'm on a not ADV bike.
I borrowed for the DGR. I borrowed our friend Dave's bike, and it was a Triumph Street Triple, and I remember riding it back home. I was like, this has no cruise control.
Yeah.
And anything like that. I was like, man,
no
you get
fairings?
Spoiled by it. Oh, no fairing.
No
I've been
grips.
on adventure bikes. Both of my bikes that I've owned so far were adventure bikes and stuff. So I always had fairings in the windscreen. Every time I get on a naked bike, I'm like, so this is what it feels like. Literally fighting yourself against the wind.
Well, and personally too, because I've had a cruiser. My first bike was a cruiser, and I know, right. But one of the reasons I got rid of it so quick, mainly the biggest reason, obviously, was I just outgrew it too quick. Yeah. It was a Rebel 500. But the other thing was because he's got his bike and do off-road stuff, and I was like, I'm just kind of stuck on the road. I want to do both.
I remember one of the first rides we did together up to Bear Lake.
Oh yeah, the Minnetonka Cave.
Yeah, there was this. Have you ever been up there, Minnetonka Cave? So it's just past Bear Lake up in the Idaho side, and the road leading up to it's paved, but it's kind of poorly paved. Yeah. So it has a lot of, it's pretty warped. And I remember riding and every few minutes he would just be bottoming out his suspension. Just be kung, kung, kung.
Yeah, you're not exactly a small guy.
No, I'm not. So I'm not a small guy, and
the tall guy on a 500
on a Rebel 500 where Honda bikes are already notorious for shitty rear suspension.
Yeah.
And the Rebel seat is maybe that much padding. So
they have people like me in mind for it.
I know, huh? Weird.
Which is funny because my first bike was the CB500X, which has the same exact engine that the Rebel 500 does.
But it's just built out lower.
Lower, but it's still an adventure bike, so you kind of has that standard upright seating position. So it's a little more comfortable in that. Rear suspension has way more travel, but I just remember Mitch every few seconds just be ow, ow, ow,
ow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was.
Do you like the KTM so far?
Yeah, I've been liking it. It had I haven't had any problems with it yet. It's got some weird things that it's taken me a while to get used to. After having the build quality of the Triumph,
Yeah.
the KTM is, I don't know, it's almost like the Honda of European bikes maybe, because the build quality is not. I mean, it's there, but
Like
it's
the Honda?
cheap.
Oh.
You know, like.
Yeah.
Like, I can scratch the finishes on stuff, and it's like, well, that's weird. I don't like that. And the buttons feel kind of chintzy
Mushy?
and stuff like that. Yeah, whereas
Yeah.
the Triumph doesn't feel like that at all.
Yeah,
Right.
kind of. I will say, like, I mean, we're a little biased here
I think we're all.
Yeah.
because their fit and finish is like
It's top
perfect.
notch.
There's a couple of
Yeah.
like little things on my Tiger 900 that I'm like, this could be a little bit better. Like my side, right side, like plastic panel, like rattles a little bit when I'm accelerating. But I'm like, I probably just need to tighten it. Or
You
something
might
like
just
that.
need a new bike, actually.
Yeah.
I should just buy.
Honestly,
I should
like,
just
a
keep
new
buying
tire.
another bike.
Yeah.
Well, and you're talking about your modern adventure bike, and we have like the modern classics, the
Yeah.
cafe style. So I think like that is where Triumph shines.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is like-
absolutely.
Yeah, they've definitely put like even like the Thruxton and well yours same thing, that 1200 motor
Yep.
has the fake carbs that look like cars with
Yeah.
the throttle bodies, so they really go into
And the cooling air
aesthetics.
fins.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Even though it's water cooled, you can't tell. No one can
it's
look
really-
at it and
it's
know
really
that it's
awesome.
water cooled.
Yeah.
What's been like your favorite part about having the KTM so far, or what do you like most about it?
It's just so comfortable. It seems like, and like already, I've taken it off on some off-road stuff, and the doors that it opens is awesome.
Yeah.
And then what's your least favorite thing about it?
I haven't had any problems yet, but I'm expecting problems with the KTM. The reliability is not known to be the best
Yeah.
ever. There's a Facebook group that I'm part of right now. It's called 79890 failed engine cams.
Oh no.
So I'm waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
They with next to no mile, like 15,000 miles on it, they're like cams are shot for some reason.
Yeah.
Oh, hopefully
Everybody's
that-
kind of speculating it's oil pressure or it's they didn't harden the cams right, or they're made of cheese. There's just something's wrong, and I'm just hoping that
Hopefully yours
it's not.
does not have that same issue.
And the other thing has been dealing with the dealership. I'm not a huge fan of the KTM dealerships that we have. There's multiple, but I'm not huge on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I was wondering about, like with the KTM stuff, I see them on Instagram, and this is very subjective. But whenever I see like a KTM dirt bike or adventure bike, whoever's riding it, they're usually like doing a full send. They're abusing this bike to the max. So I'm wondering, like, do you think these other people are probably doing that to their bikes that are like making them break? And like with the scratching and stuff, like how much do you really care if it's like a
And that's the thing.
dirt
I think
bike, you know?
since they have such a huge footprint in the dirt bike world.
on stunting, really, like dirt stunting,
and
I
like
guess.
they're really good at advertising to the extreme of their riders, like, and they're in Dakar and all that stuff, and everybody just knows if you're gonna go hardcore off-roader, you're on a KTM
and Husky,
and
right?
yeah. And so like they are a performance. I almost at some point have to think of them like Ducati is to super sports. They are
KTM
like
is
the cream of the crop, and when
Yeah.
it comes to off-roading, KTM's also just the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And sometimes the reliability is an afterthought.
Well, I think reliability, like once you dive into performance, like with any machine sport or anything with machinery, once you dive into performance, you're losing reliability.
yeah, what's that, like the triangle that they have is like cheap, performance, and then reliability, and you can only have like two.
can only-
Yeah.
And so
I feel like Triumph makes a decent balance between.
Yeah.
I would think
all of
so.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I can't think.
BMW as well. I feel like BMW,
Yeah.
like you don't hear too many problems about.
the
their
only
bikes
thing
and
I
stuff.
always hear about BMWs,
I heard they're boring.
they're soulless.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same with the
soulless.
Japanese
Yep.
bikes. And
Yeah,
stuff.
they're
It's kind of
soulless.
like
And-
very even.
Yep. Surgical.
Everything. Yep.
Yep.
And it's just
It's very
I don't know.
precise.
Part of the reason I ride is because it's a visceral feeling. You know?
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you mentioned that, like, this is a small tangent, but like when I first found my bike, my Scrambler, right? I went and test rode it and it's like, oh, I love this bike. This is my bike, I was feeling kind of bad because I hadn't even had my Honda for a year. And I get on my Honda and immediately I notice like no, I still like this bike. It's still fun. I'm on a motorcycle having fun. Like, but what I recognized was that lack of character.
Yep.
After riding my first like Japanese bike.
That's how it felt like with my Honda as well.
Yep.
It's just
And that's the
it's
thing.
predictable.
Yeah.
And, which is great.
And you can
especially if
appreciate
you're a new
it.
rider and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like after a while you're like, I kind of want a little more pep.
Yeah,
a little bit more.
I feel like so many people are in motorcycles. It's like Harleys. Harley guys love Harleys because they're Harleys. You know? And like cars, you can get away with things just not having a feel to them because everybody needs a car.
Yeah.
Motorcycles, people are in it usually for a reason.
Yeah, at least here
especially
in the
States.
Yeah.
And it's got to have a soul to it. It's just
I
agree.
But I think like people who do like appreciate or who like they want their Japanese bikes, it's like because like they maybe it's like a self-safety thing of just like this bike is reliable. I can run it. I can do whatever I want to it.
It's the Honda Civics or
and they're
the
cheap.
Toyota Camrys of
way cheaper.
the motorcycle world.
And they're cheap to fix. So if you're into stunting or really just ringing your bike out. But anyway.
They do like the Japanese bikes. They just have some pretty like interesting designs and bikes and stuff
they
like
do.
that. Like I really like I'm a fan of like the Honda. I think the CB. Like the 650, 1000 where it has just like
those four inline,
like the headers just look
beautiful
so
bike
and stuff. I don't know how it is to ride, but like some
probably soulless.
Probably
let's just assume that at that point.
I mean, well, if anything, I think with an inline 4, that's probably the smoothest.
So. Or they got like that. I will say the Africa Twin probably has some good character, like a bit of character. Like it seems,
it's a parallel.
It's got a good exhaust note and stuff. And then like you got the Goldwing, which is like a whole other dimension of bikes where it's like the smoothest couch on two wheels.
It probably feels so removed to it, you know. And I want to be involved in noisy motors and all that good stuff.
I feel like a Goldwing is probably like really closely related to like or how it feels to riding like those the reverse trikes.
And I feel like that's probably why like Harleys and Indians and stuff like that are like pretty popular bikes to have, is because they kind of have like that character, that special feel to them.
But you can still drive it across the country and stuff like that.
Despite their question about like reliability and things like that.
Complete lack of power. But hey, that's no big deal.
It's all good. Yeah.
we rode Indians a couple of times. Just like
I actually did enjoy the Indian.
I really enjoyed like the Scout. I wasn't the most comfortable. There's like the Chieftain.
I was on I was on their Super Big Mac Supreme Chieftain. But I don't know. I'll say I appreciated it. I enjoyed it. Would I buy one? No, but I get it. I get why people like
when I was looking for a bike, the FTR was on my list. The R9T was on my list. Obviously the Thruxton. Kawasaki Z900 I think was on my list. Just
that's a good looking bike.
Yeah, and it is a good looking one, but the Triumph just
that character.
I get it. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Got me.
So I'm sure our audience knows why we're friends with Emerson now.
Yep.
We simp hard on
literally like
very much.
Most of our like riding buddies and friends and stuff. We all ride Triumph except for one.
Yep.
And that's it.
We're like an incel group for Triumph. So.
Pretty much.
Should we move on to our off-road adventure?
Yeah, let's establish Emerson's credentials.
Yes. Emerson is a way more experienced rider than either one of us.
Not on dirt, though.
Not on dirt.
You guys have more time on dirt.
Little bit, not much. But.
And if you are planning on riding on dirt, be sure, and you need some gear for it, be sure to use our Revzilla affiliate link down in the description below. If you're not planning on buying any gear, you can still support us by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/tdtmotorcycles.
And thank you to everybody who has donated through donated through Buy Me a Coffee or bought through
I think I've used your guys' link a couple times.
We appreciate
I might have
it.
forgotten on the last one about that armor.
We'll forgive you.
We appreciate it either way.
All right, well, let's get into the class. So we all, like I said earlier, we all took the off-road class with Grit Moto Adventures up in Park City, and Mitch and I had some experience like riding off-road before. While I was kind of like planning this episode and stuff, I was thinking of our past experience. I was like, we actually did like quite a bit.
I know.
Nothing intense, but we're like, okay, we've gotten ourselves into like some decent situations and stuff.
Considering having no experience.
Yeah, exactly. Just try to like praying that we don't drop our bike. Like I've dropped mine once so far, not when we were together, but like just once. And then, but it was really awesome that like as soon as this class came up, I think all three of us were like, oh shit, we need to do this because it was like, actual like practice experienced off-road riders. And the class was hosted by Sean
Thomas. I'll look up their social.
Sean Thomas and Luis.
I'll get their info. I've already dropped their name.
All right, Mitch will get that.
I know it, but
like all three of us basically wanted to learn some at least basic off-road riding skills. And what this class is like the MSF.
A BRC
Yeah.
to off-road riding.
To off-road riding. And I feel like I learned a lot from it.
And like my thing, I wanted to come into, since I'm early in my off-road stuff, if I was making mistakes, because I only off-road with you guys, and you guys might be making mistakes too.
100%.
I wanted to like stop those right at the very beginning. You know.
And I feel like they, Sean and Luis did a great job of kind of like. Okay. Yeah.
So we have Sean Thomas with Sean Thomas Rock On Instagram, and then we have Louise Colleen Powers as a girl on a motorcycle, or excuse me, a girl on a motorbike. Very extremely knowledgeable people.
Super friendly, super nice. They did such a great job at like explaining the exercise and what we were doing, and just going over like the basics of off-roading.
So positive too.
Really,
so
disgustingly positive.
Well, like one thing I was thinking about our experience doing that too, and like our one of the first things Louise said to me, like in the classroom, like once we were started the class, changed everything I knew about off-roading already. I was like, oh.
What did she say?
I can't really remember.
Do better.
You're
doing it wrong.
Do less bad. Yeah. No, it was with. It was like thought I was looking forward and like turning around and look forward enough, and I was like, you got to look up more. And I was like, more? Okay, but it did help. It did help the rest of the day.
And it kind of reminded me a lot of the MSF course, because that was like the biggest thing the instructors there were telling me, like, got to keep your eyes up. Well,
you hear that all the time, right? Yep. But then, like, once you're in the class and you're doing it, and then you have that instructor, like Louise, she looked right at me and said, you need to look up. I'm up.
It's easy to get target fixated when you're
really especially those like bright orange cones and stuff on the ground. So the class started off with just kind of like the basic introductions. There was maybe like 20-ish riders there or so,
something like that.
About
most of them were on BMW R1250s or R1250 or R1200 GSs. And they got dropped the most. So just BMW riders out there just saying,
like, big bikes.
You guys drop your bikes. I mean, they only drop like a 45-degree angle, which is nice.
Oh no, I dropped my bike.
They just leaned over instead of driving.
As long as you've got those crash bars.
And so the class kind of started off with just like the instructors demonstrating like the basic riding position, like where you stand, like where your feet should be on the foot pegs, like your hands shouldn't have any pressure on them, which I was like, I don't know, like it makes sense in my head, but I was like, duh, like why didn't I think of that before? Like you're basically holding yourself up with your legs and core, and your hands are just there to kind of lightly manipulate the controls. And then we finally went down to the course, which is just a big rectangular patch of dirt that they had cones set up on. But in order to get there, we first had to go down that really steep hill.
Not just steep, a gravelly steep hill.
Steep. Yeah, that's the steepest thing I've taken my bike down.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably the second steepest.
Yeah,
probably about the second. Yeah.
That's about the second steepest. Yeah.
And I ended up like locking my rear brake a couple of times because I put my bike in off-road mode and ended up killing it, but it's still sliding because the brake's still locked down. So I was able to like restart it before it like slowed down completely. But the person in front of me was going also pretty slow. I'm like, I need to go a little bit faster because this thing's going to tip over otherwise. So that was like, I remember I was like feeling a little nervous on that first initial descent just because I was going so slow. I was like, oh, I don't want to drop this.
And I get pretty freaked out with hills, like going downhill too, especially when it's like gravelly like that was, like that those like little chunky rocks, you know? It's like, but at the same time, like once I like start to feel the bike struggling, I'm just like, I need to go faster. And if I don't, I'm going to fall. So I just like send it.
I was trying to do that, but the guy in front
was
going so slow.
That made it worse.
That happened to me a few times in the course.
Don't rub the wire. Sorry.
Oops, my bad. But that was one thing I noticed too. Is I didn't give myself enough space from the person in front of me. And because they were going slow, I had to slow down, and it threw off my whole mojo. So. And
I don't have problems with like downhills if it's just a downhill into a straight line.
And there's not a line of bikes in front of you.
But as soon as like it's like a downhill into a curve, that's where I get nervous because that's the time I dropped my bike was kind of like on a slope like that because I was like, it's downhill into a curve and then on the other side is a drop. I'm like, that's a little scary.
The implication of harm is kind of high.
Like, sure, dropping the bike sucks, but also like I don't want to get hurt personally because the bike I can fix myself might take longer to fix or not at all.
Can you afford to fix yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And then the first exercise we did after we got down to the patch of dirt, we kind of just did a circle in the dirt and like parked our bikes. And the first one they had us do was basically like just the really slow speed maneuvers.
Yeah.
Going maybe like 2 to 5 miles an hour.
No throttle input.
No throttle input.
Just all
clutch.
friction zone.
Yep. All clutch work. What'd you guys think of that like exercise?
Well, one thing I just like, for me personally, I noticed it was like it was a lot like the MSF in that sense of like, you know, learn to walk your bike with that zone, but then like going off road, you had to deal with ruts and getting sucked into like a little line.
Yeah, train's not flat.
Yep. It was like it was weird because it's like, oh yeah, I know what to do. I know how to ride in my friction zone. But then it added all that other stuff, and it was a little overwhelming at first. Like that with the hill. Yeah. At least for me, I was like,
and we were doing it all standing up too.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't mind it. Being a shorter rider, I have decent balance. I have to because I just try not to put my feet on the ground as much as possible. And the KTM makes that much easier because the fuel's so low. So compared to most adventure bikes, the center of gravity on it is so low compared to most.
Yeah,
that was one of the reasons I gravitated towards it over the small GS or even like a Tenere or whatever.
Or the Tiger.
They're just so top heavy.
Yeah.
And being short with a top heavy bike is not the best of things.
That makes sense.
So,
and then so we did the off road and it felt weird going so slow because we were going like walking pace, basically like a human walking pace, and they even kept telling us like, you're going too fast, you got to slow down. They were walking backwards.
I got 105 horsepower in between. I got to go fast.
Look up.
Look up. Yep. And I thought it was a pretty cool exercise because like especially doing it standing up and going that slow, it kind of reminded me of like, I don't really ride bicycles much anymore, but when you're kind of like, if you're like a kid or something, you're trying to like see how long you can hold the bike up without it like tipping over or putting your feet down. It's basically that, except with something that costs, you know, like 15 grand.
Yeah, a little heavier.
A little heavier. Yeah.
Well, like, and one of these days,
more expensive to fix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like one of these days, I've always have like, you know, at Cycle Gear they have like that rider night every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
And they have like the slow races. It's like I've wanted to partake in one of those. So like every once in a while, I really do like try to practice my slow speed.
Yeah.
And like, okay, cool. Again, I can ride my friction zone, slow down. But once that dirt was introduced, and you got an instructor, like, you're going too fast. You got to look up. I was like,
and especially like as the day went on, that dirt got looser and looser and looser.
Yeah.
The ruts along that front, like that where we were sitting, we had that shade section. They were like, was so deep in the center.
Yeah.
And you can feel your bike just like squirming, like. And like riding off-road, not only is your bike moving forward, it's also sliding back like side to side a little bit.
Definitely nerve-wracking.
And it kind of like throws you off because like as soon as you feel something, you're like, something's going wrong. And then you constantly have to remind yourself like, the bike's going to stand up. Like unless you overcorrect or like freak out, the bike's not going to fall down. It's just going to keep going. And that's like kind of a hard like mentality to kind of work through after riding like on pavement so much.
And that's my thing too, with having so much street riding background. I'm so used to just being locked in at all times that it's so different to feel any sort of like wiggling or anything like that.
It's a whole different a whole different way of riding, a whole different experience. And as we'll like talk a little bit later in the podcast, like you're almost doing the exact opposite of what you do on
pretty
the road.
much.
I mean, and that's why I wanted to try to like at least kibosh all my bad habits now.
Which
I think is a great idea. I know I was bringing them in. I know it.
Which I think is great, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to take the course too. Is like having that real-time feedback from the instructors as you're riding is priceless because you know you can watch so many YouTube videos, you can watch your like GoPro footage of you doing stuff. But nothing beats having that like experienced outside observer, like seeing all your mistakes because they've made those same mistakes before you.
Because I'm not going to call myself out.
No.
I make no mistakes.
I'll call you out.
I'll remember that next time.
Well, the whole thing, like, you know, like the look up stuff, like even when we went riding last week on that Jeremy Ranch Road.
Yeah.
I caught myself, like, just that voice in my head was like, nope, look further up ahead.
Yeah,
like,
I kept trying to remind myself of that too.
And honestly, like, even when we were doing that, when I did remember to look up and straight ahead, it was surprisingly easier.
It really is.
Whoa, it's
And
like
less-
you what they were talking about.
It's like, and it's less it's like less concerning too, because you're not. Yeah, it's just like
You're not
seeing-
micro-analyzing every single pebble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And you're seeing where you're going, and basically like the whole premise of like motorcycle, whether it's off or on road, is like the bike's gonna go where you're looking. And like, you know, you see some crashes like YouTube or TikTok and Reels and stuff like that where very clearly the person like target fixated on one specific point, and that's where they went.
That's what I'm seeing the most in any motorcycle video crash I see now.
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
just like
if they have a GoPro on, like there's all stuff going on, but the camera's just looking straight ahead into something.
They're just not like, and that's like the whole thing. And Emerson and I, we both snowboard, and
Same
it's
deal.
like it's the same deal. You know, you're going through trees and stuff like that.
If
You're
you're
looking
looking- if
between the trees, not
You
in,
focus
at
on the
tree.
trees, you're gonna hit it.
Yeah.
So
And I was like constantly trying to remind myself, like, Glove, just look.
it'll just take
look where
you
you're going.
hitting a couple, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah,
I've
pretty
done
much.
that.
Yeah. I fell in a tree well once, so
Oh, that's a little dangerous.
board
I
first.
hit one.
Board first, luckily,
Yeah, I went to take a turn, messed up somehow, and like centered my back
into a tree.
on a tree.
Oh,
and then my,
yeah, that.
yeah.
You also got caught in an avalanche.
Welcome
Yeah, that's
welcome to
different,
two dudes talking snowboarding and one guy sitting quietly.
Back to motorcycles.
Yeah.
So that first exercise had us basically practice standing up and then going really, really slow. And the last bit of that exercise is probably my favorite. Is so the instructors, they basically like
To grab your
emulated to like distractions, like a tree branch hitting you or things getting in your way and stuff. But the last bit they did is they grabbed the back of our bikes and basically like try to keep us from moving. Their goal was to basically make us put our foot down and stuff. And Emerson, you had a pretty fun experience with that.
Yeah, he grabbed the back of my bike pretty good. And I kept it up for a little bit, and he let go. And being a short rider on a tall bike, I need to pick a side that I'm going to put my foot down. And I picked the wrong side. So dropped the bike. Didn't have temp tags on it, so at least there's that. And it was in dust and dirt, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Didn't leave any marks or anything. But yeah, first drop on the bike. At least it was there.
How did it feel?
I laughed.
I think we all did.
Yeah,
we all
everybody
did.
laughed. Yeah, I saw the video. I know everyone was laughing. But I kind of went into it knowing that I was probably going to drop the bike in that class.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But at least with your bike, like it's kind
It's
of
built for it.
It's built to be dropped.
From the factory, it's the 790, 890s are ready to be dropped.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt about it.
Did it fall like pretty flat on the ground? Or
No,
did the
so
fuel
like
tank kind of help?
that's what's nice about that saddle tank is that saddle tank also kind of like the Boxer engine and the GS's.
Yeah.
It gives it a little bit more protection as far as how far it's going to fall over.
That's good.
And so I didn't have to pick it up. I think Sean felt bad, so he picked it up for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not too bad of a bike because I've even dropped it once in a parking lot being stupid too and picked it up no problem.
Yeah.
It happens.
Did you put your foot down when they were grabbing your bike?
I did put my foot down.
Okay, I did too.
I tried that. And it didn't work.
we got the legs. For
I picked the wrong foot.
That was, and then after that we moved on to I think it was the body position exercise where they had us like accelerate and then slow down. And I'm sure if you're like an off-road rider you know this, but like it's crazy like how far you have to lean back
to brake
when you're braking, so more of your weight's on the back wheel, and when you're accelerating to lean forward, so you don't like the bike doesn't try to wheelie itself or rise up.
Yeah.
And it's really like I kind of knew that because I've done mountain biking a little bit before. And I kind of like knew that from that.
Yeah.
But it's way more extreme than I imagined. Like you're really leaning forward and really like scooting your ass back.
Yeah.
And or while standing like to the back of the bike.
Yeah. And like one thing, like, 'cause it sounds simple enough. Oh, forward to go forward, like lean back to slow, But one thing that I was like finding myself struggling with, especially with like the scrambler riding position, is that to go from especially with like any sort of uphill or like if you want to lean forward, it's like I have a hard time finding like getting that lean forward without using the the handlebars.
To kind of wrench yourself forward.
That's how I am too. It's just like a weird thing to.
It's like I got to figure out how to like
mentality.
Use my pelvis or something to
just
like
lean your body instead of.
Well, one of the things she mentioned was the people that had tank bags. I think you had your tank bag on that day.
Yeah.
She mentioned that, but I use my tank. It's soft.
You have a small one too.
Yeah, and so I use my tank bag almost as like a reminder. Like when I feel that tank bag on my balls, then I'm leaning forward enough.
So we're not touching your tank bag.
Correct. Yeah. Don't touch the bike in general.
That's good. Thanks for letting us know.
I had the biggest problem doing the leaning back. It just felt so unnatural for me. Plus, I got short arms, so like I can only go so far back, and then I'm putting that pressure on the bars.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing. Like, is like when I lean back, my throttle hand would kind of like give it a little bit more gas. So instead of slowing down, I'm like, oh.
And I think maybe for me it's easier because again, like I'm in that attack position.
Yeah,
on the
yours
scrambler.
is more, like pretty aggressive.
So I don't even really leaning back is no problem. I can just like extend my arms out and lean back without touching my throttle.
Yeah.
But like if you're in that more normal standing, I could see like how you're because you're shifting like the angle of like your shoulders.
I still need to adjust my handlebars, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but before we even went down, they kind of went over like things you can do to your bike to make it like more off-road friendly and stuff like that.
Yeah. And they told me to leave my bike alone.
And I need to do
don't
it
touch
with my bike is basically like loosen up the handlebars and rotate them up a little bit.
I've already done that.
Hands are pointing down instead of like that. Which I was like, once again, it makes sense in my head though. It's like one of those things like I didn't really think about.
Yeah, once a professional tells you, you're like, oh,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Huh.
Exactly. And
this is your job? If not, it should be.
And but the body position, like my biggest thing with that was like I knew in my head what to do, but it's getting that timing. Like I would always either like let go of the throttle before I lean back or like brake before I lean back. So I was like off the brake, the bike starts slowing down, and then I lean back when they kept telling us like first you lean back, then you slow down. First you lean forward, then you accelerate. And it's just one of those things where it's kind of tricky to like you know what to do, but your brain doesn't do it quick enough.
So how did you guys do with that exercise?
I feel like I did okay.
My forward stuff's coordinated. The braking stuff nowhere near coordinated.
I feel like for me it was the other way.
Or the
other way around.
Stuff.
For me, it was like my biggest thing I kept running into would be like near the end of it, it's like okay, like I can lean back and I can brake, but one thing that I just could not get through that entire day was like sitting down before it came to a stop.
That came in the later exercise.
But remember they even told us in that exercise like just don't sit down, just brake.
Yeah, they wanted you to go.
Brake and go.
Yeah, they don't want you to touch the seat.
And I would just kind of I don't know.
Yeah. And I remember like for me at least like my bike, like the engine braking, especially in off-road mode, isn't really noticeable. Like, and because I think they had us riding like second or third gear at that point. Yeah. And I'm like, it's not really.
Yeah, and that's how I felt. Like, I don't feel like I need to roll back as much
because like my bike's just kind of like slowly coasting to a stop instead of like aggressively engine braking.
And I feel like the GS's have a ton of engine braking.
Yeah, I think it's because they're more torquey.
Yeah, my bike has a ton of
ton of engine braking. The KTM doesn't have nearly the same amount.
Neither does the Tiger.
It's just smaller motor. It's mine's only 900. Yours is only 900.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So it didn't feel like quite as much. So I feel like I didn't feel as much of the impact of that.
Yeah.
But it did come later when we actually were doing like applying the brakes, not just engine braking and stuff to the bike. Which brings us to our third exercise, which was braking practice, and this was basically broken up into 3 parts. So first was rear only, second was front only, and then third was like emergency braking using both brakes at the same time. And that's what Mitch was saying. We came to like a complete stop and had to sit down, put our feet down, and then go again.
Yep.
And I personally struggled with that third bit a little bit, a lot, because every time I would sit down, I applied the throttle because my hand would just naturally rotate down as I'm sitting down. Luckily, I had my clutch in, so I ended up like launching myself forward. But it was still like something to be mindful about. And like, okay, either I'm gripping that way too tight, or I just need to like be more mindful of it.
Yeah.
But I will say that rear braking was pretty fun.
I had a blast with it.
Yeah.
That's being able to lock up tires is awesome.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me
of like bring your back tire out.
Yeah, and you can feel like, oh, if I weight this side a little bit, I can correct whatever's going on back there. Yeah, it was
I
nice.
can't wait till we can like do like the turns just using like our tire spinning.
Yep. And it kind of reminded me of like when you're a little kid and you're riding your bikes down the street and you like lock up the back wheel to see if you can leave the longest skid mark down. Like it's basically the same thing except on a motorcycle.
Bigger scale.
When I was a kid, I did do I wasn't good at it, but I did do a little BMX stuff. And me and some of my friends, we got to that point like where we could like hit our brake and we could like spin around and take off.
It's so much fun.
I'm terrified to do it on a motorcycle because it's like 5 times, 6, 10 times the cost.
Well, not only that, but it's also like if you drop it, it's going to cost money to hurt. Like fix something if you drop it hard enough. Or, a bicycle, you're like,
oh well,
whatever. Just throw it on the ground. That's fine.
Well, you gotta show your friends. Look at this sick scratch I got.
Yeah, pretty much.
My Huffy.
Put a little card in the spokes.
I was a mongoose guy. I don't know about Huffy.
Listen. And then that was probably like one of my favorite parts of the exercise because you can feel that back wheel and you can feel your tail kind of like the back of your bike kind of skid out of place and you're like, I can correct this. As long as the front's pointing where you want to go, it's gonna kind of follow. And we kind of did that over and over and over to basically get the hang of it. So we like accelerate, hit the back brake, and lean back, hit the back brake.
Yeah.
And then lean forward, accelerate, lean back, hit the back brake, and locking that thing up was just so much fun.
Yeah,
I loved it.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, I did. Like when we went up to Jeremy Ranch, we were like both trying to do it.
Yeah. Actually, I think what I was doing wrong. Remember, I couldn't get my back wheel to lock up.
Yeah.
I wasn't leaning back. I don't think. I think the leaning
make
back.
That much of a difference?
I think it might because you're shifting a lot of weight back there.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to. My brakes are probably nearing the end of their life. So.
I didn't have as much of a hard time like locking it up, but I noticed I had to like really push it down because I think it just takes a lot more than we think because when we did the Jeremy Ranch Road, it wasn't as loose as where we did this training.
They definitely raked that road or something. Yeah.
So I feel like there's plenty of traction there. But because I noticed on my bike, at least, I really had to like really put my foot like way down on the rear brake to like get it to lock up.
Yeah.
And my front one doesn't lock up, so I didn't have much trouble there.
I don't really want to lock up my front one.
if I'm gonna try to lock it up, I'm stomping on it. I don't know why. Because it's more fun.
Yeah, it is more fun.
Yeah, I'll do that next time. I'll just give it a gold stomp.
Give her the beans.
Power. And then like the second exercise was the front brake, which was a little bit different because at least on my bike, in off-road mode, it doesn't shut off the ABS on the front, it just shuts it off in the rear. But it does put it into the off-road ABS mode, which kind of lets it give it a little bit more slide instead of just, it's more like and it did feel different, but it still did the job.
Yeah, one thing I noticed with the front, and one thing that freaked me out the most with it is like, they kept saying like, don't put any weight on the handlebars. So I leaned back and I just hit the front brake we're supposed to, but then like momentum would send me forward. I'm trying to maintain, so I'm putting like more pressure on the handlebars. Yeah. Which I now understand, like that's what you want. You want that friction on the front tire to slow down. But in that situation, I'm like, there's so much weight on these handlebars. If I go off into a rut and the bike locks up, I'm gonna.
What I noticed I did when we were doing that exercise, that I dropped my heels. And so it would stop me from wanting to go as far forward. Because then I was really working my legs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because then it almost worked. It's like you're clawing your pegs pretty much.
Yeah. I wonder if that works on our ADV boots.
I'm gonna have to try it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I do want to get like wider foot pegs for mine because I noticed like mine are pretty narrow. I looked up the price for mine and it's like $200 for like a set. I'm just like, this is just like two pieces of metal. Yeah.
Motorcycle stuff is always, because they know you're buying less stuff, so you have to upcharge it.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing with tires.
Tires. I just ordered a new set for my bike. And I was like,
did you?
Yeah. I was like almost like $500.
You put 4 new tires on a car for the price of your...
Exactly. And I'm just like, why the fuck is it so expensive?
It's
2 less tires and they're smaller.
The last set of tires I bought for my car was my old car, and my motorcycle tires were more expensive than that.
My motorcycle.
It's not quite the same with me and the Bronco. Like those tires are stupid expensive.
They're still. I drive a Toyota Camry. Yeah, my tires are like, I just go get the cheapest like tires from Walmart and stuff and just slap them on there because I don't give a shit. It's a 15-year-old car. I don't care enough to put expensive tires on it. But a motorcycle, I'm like, I'm gonna get specific tires for it because like the ones I have lasted forever, which I really like. Man, but I'm like, it's like between the 2 tires and then like charging or having the dealership
Yeah.
put them on for me. It's like I was almost $500.
You know,
I'm like,
honestly, like
God.
with how expensive motorcycles are, I think we should be able to declare them as dependents. Because
I'm down with that.
we should
Yeah.
be able to write them off on their taxes.
Same thing
Yeah.
with my dogs. you know.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, for
true.
sure,
That's
yeah.
definitely dependent. Yeah,
Yeah. How much money I throw at my bike just to keep it happy, I'm like,
pretty much.
Yeah.
It's like, that's
Exactly
my
the
child.
same as a kid.
it is. Yeah. It's
Except if you
gonna
don't
turn
forget-
18 years old and I'll never see it
Yeah,
again.
except for my motorcycle and my dogs always love me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids might not be the same.
And then we went on to the third exercise, which was basically like to emulate emergency braking. We used both brakes at the same time, came to a complete stop, sat down, put our
Foot
feet
down,
down,
yep.
and then get going again. The idea of the exercise was kind of emulate, you're riding along the trail, you take a corner, and there's a random obstacle in the way, you have to brake really quick.
Yeah.
An animal runs out, trees falling down, somebody fell,
Bad
etc.
line.
Yeah, bad line. And that exercise I found to be like way harder than any of the other ones we've done before, because the idea is, you accelerate, you lean forward, then you lean back, hit the rear brake to kind of shorten that.
Yep.
Was it the wheel or the trail brake?
Yeah.
So you like shorten the bike a little bit and then hit the front after applying the rear brake. And like thinking of that feels like it takes a lot of thought, because
Yep.
it's not natural for you to do that.
Yeah.
Like on the road, I just hit both brakes at the same
Yeah.
time if I'm approaching an intersection or a turn, and that makes sense. But I feel like hit the rear one first, then the front,
Yep.
and you're like trying to think of that
Yeah.
in your head as you're approaching the stopping point. But I feel like it's just one of those things that kind of will come naturally as
Yeah.
well you do it.
And I've caught myself now, I do that in the street now too. Because it might as well. It's not
Might as
hurt,
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I load up my rear brake first and then I grab my front brake.
My biggest issue with that exercise was the fact that as soon as I start sitting down, my hand would rotate the throttle,
yeah.
and I could feel the bike like
See, my whole
like
thing-
revving up a little bit.
My whole thing is I just kept sitting down and like had a foot ready to touch the ground before the bike stopped.
That was another issue. I
That's
had as well.
natural though. You feel like, oh, I'm gonna have to catch myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you want to like be kind of prepared for that.
Yep.
And but it was still like a pretty awesome exercise.
Yeah.
And you can
I
still
had a-
feel
Yeah.
like your back wheel lock up and your front one like slide a little bit more.
Yep.
So it's
I
kind
had
of
a
like,
lot of fun sliding my bike
Yeah.
around.
Oh yeah.
And like I think that was the biggest thing was trusting my brakes more.
Yeah.
Because I never really did that off road. I always just felt like, oh, these things are gonna walk up immediately, and I'm gonna be
Yeah.
freaking out.
Yeah.
And so that one helped.
You just
a
kind of
ton.
like to like let it do what it wants to
Yep.
do. And like our front ones don't lock up. I think your
Yeah.
off-road Pro mode
I think it
might
would.
lock
Yeah.
up the front, but like my front one doesn't
Yeah,
lock up.
mine won't either.
And I'm like, that works.
Yep.
That's fine. I
Good.
don't need it to lock up
Yeah,
anyways.
I don't trust myself.
Yeah, exactly.
The bike knows more than me.
Well, I feel like whenever if you're gonna wreck off road, it's always gonna be the rider's fault. The bike is designed to stay up and move.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if it goes down, that's the
That's
human
on you.
element. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
you, bud.
And if you're too scared to drop it, you might as well just not ride it.
Oh, okay. I'll stop right there.
I mean, we all
different.
don't want to like drop our bike.
Yeah, I don't
If
want
you're-
to, but
you're
I'm
taking
okay
it-
with it
Yeah,
now.
if you're taking it off road, like it's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
happen regardless. So after we done the braking exercises and then the slow speed maneuvers, it was time to kind of do like the more body position, counterbalance. I don't exactly remember what this exercise was called, but it was.
I don't remember. They just kept saying it was going to be really easy, and we all knew that it wasn't going to be really
Nope.
easy.
It's like, you guys have been doing really good. We're just gonna let you kind of glide for a minute, and
Yep.
like, oh no, this is actually kind of hard.
Yeah.
So what they did for the final exercise was they set up some cones, kind of like if you've taken the MSF, which I think every rider probably should, if you're wanting to get a road motorcycling, is you kind of do the weave through the cones and stuff in the MSF. Is basically the off-road version of that, except with one little caveat: is every loop we've done, they would move the cones closer and closer together, so
It
we had
gets-
to make a sharper and
Yep.
sharper
Every time.
turn. And the idea of that was just once again like that low speed.
Well, and then
turn
get a feel
practice.
of like what your counterbalance was.
Counterbalance was the big one on
The
that.
big
'Cause
one.
He demonstrated beforehand that, like, when he did his tight circles and like the amount of counterbalance that you can
the
do.
guy was like leaning off his seat.
One
of his,
foot up.
One
Yeah.
foot was off the
He
foot
was
peg and
almost
stuff.
dragging that cylinder head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy how it boggles my mind, especially on a bike like the GS, which is a heavy bike. It's like 100 pounds heavier than any of our bikes at least.
Yeah.
And like how well those guys can maneuver such a heavy bike, and they make it look effortless. And I'm like, if they can do it on that bike, I should be able to do it on my bike. And it's just all body position, all like it's just the way you move around the bike.
Did you guys, either of you, did you guys ever feel like you over counterbalance? So it's like the bike feels like it's going to go down, so you like go more out this way, but all of a sudden the bike starts coming back to you, and then you lost balance?
No, I didn't feel that too much.
I got that once,
That's
and that
just
was
you. You're the only one out of 20. No.
Yeah, it must have been. But no, I was just like, that
the others were dropping their GS.
But normally in like your slow speed practice, like even like on road or in the parking lot, right? It's like you haven't balanced right, where you start to kind of drop it the way you're turning. It was so weird to feel it like kind of come back to me. I'm like, okay, overcorrect.
Yeah.
Oh, and then
it's so much more of that unpredictability of the terrain that I think that really drives that.
My biggest thing with that was like, I noticed
my front tire slipped too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's true.
Sorry, I just remembered that.
My biggest thing was like, the idea is to counterbalance your entire body. So if the bike is turning left, you lean your whole body right. And I realized I was leaning my torso right, but my hips were still going with the bike. So it's kind of like this. I'm like, I needs to be more like that.
Yep.
And I was like, wait, my ass also needs to be where my torso is.
That's where most of my meat is. So, you got to really throw the hips out there.
For some reason, like, I don't know, they didn't really point it out to me either. I was like, wait a minute, I'm not doing this right. My hips also need to be away from the bike.
Well, I think
so. I'm just trying to be like more mindful of that now.
Well, and I think like what helped me, because I was doing like I lost balance. I put my foot down a lot for that last exercise, but I think like one thing that helped me like get my hips out. And I know I mentioned it before. Is like I can't remember, like one of the instructors they told me is like, or they mentioned it. It's like, like if your bike's leaning left, so you need to go right. Dig your right knee into your tank.
Yeah,
and so your hips will kind of. So you use like your anatomy to like kind of remind yourself. So if you put your
that's what I ended up doing on like the last few.
I think that's what helps me is, and then I always, my left hand ones, great.
Yeah.
Right hand ones were slacking.
Trickier.
Yeah.
It's scary.
And what I was doing, I would dig my knee, but I would almost rotate my entire body. So like I was really swinging it out.
Those hips out.
Okay, yeah.
And so like my left hand turns, I would be completely slung over the bike.
Yeah.
And the right hand ones just didn't feel the same.
And I remember, I think it was Sean that mentioned like the right hand is a little tricky because that's your throttle hand. So you kind of have to like make sure that hand has control.
Yeah, you feel crowded a little bit, I think, when you're
and like for me too, like not only crowded, but even on your left hand side, like where you're using your clutch too, it just feels kind of weird to like be working it out here.
Far reach.
Yeah, that's another thing. And once again, like the biggest thing for me was like I kept looking at those cones. Like as I'm going around them, I'm like staring down at it. I'm like, I just got to look at the next one. Like, I can't look at the one I'm passing.
You got to look,
And I remember like somebody knocked one over, so they like try to get people to like
kick it up,
kick it back up with their feet.
I got it. I got it. My little legs got it.
You got yours. I saw you get yours.
Did I get mine?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
I missed. I was the only one out of all of us that missed it. So
it's okay. We forgive you.
Yeah. It's just too much leg.
What's that like?
It was like crazy because those cones kept getting like closer and closer, and at one point it's almost like a figure eight. Like you go past
you're
one,
almost doing a 180,
curving around the other one, like you're backtracking a tad. And I mean, it was a really cool exercise because it really lets you feel like this bike can go so much further than I think it can. It's just like a mental block that's like there. They're like, I want to drop it. Like I'm going too slow, but
the bike wants to go.
It's just going to stay up as long as you're positioning yourself correctly. Like the bike's going to stay up, and it's crazy just how that works.
Yeah, that's so cool. But no, I had a good time with it, you guys. I think
I had an awesome time.
I learned so much more like in that half a day than I did in all of our times just trying to figure it out on our own.
100%, yeah. And
go figure.
Like, well, I feel like we did pretty decent on our own. For the most part, I mean, I dropped my bike, so I was like, okay, maybe not.
It's bound to happen, though.
Yeah.
Right?
No, from that class, for me, it was like, I've been doing pretty much everything wrong.
100%.
It was all body positioning for me.
Yeah.
Like how much of a difference that the weight makes.
Such a big difference.
Because it's so backwards compared to street riding. Like I want to lean with the turn, and I want to, and this is just completely opposite.
Yeah, it's completely opposite. And having that like side to side movement and stuff is like something that even now I'm like, ooh, it just feels wrong. It just feels wrong. It just feels weird. When me and you did a ride, right before, like a week before the class.
Oh yeah.
And we hit some like tire snakes along the way. And I remember going 60 miles an hour on the highway and hitting a tire snake, and you feel your bike going side to side. You're like, oh yeah, my balls just tucked in my body back into my body a little bit. But off road, you're like, okay, it's going slow, but you're still feeling that same sensation, and it's like, ooh, that's that throws me off a little bit. Yeah. And I remember them saying like, a lot of people have like they get tempted to go fast because bike, as long as it's moving, you're going to stay upright. But the key to riding like off road better and more properly is like, people do rallies and they ride their bikes fast off road. Yeah. So, but like to get good at it, you got to start slow. You got to get those basics down and kind of figure out how to like keep the bike upright before you can speed yourself up.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. So, do you guys feel like you feel more confident off road?
100%.
Absolutely.
After that class?
Yeah, that was what I wanted to pull out of it most was
confidence.
The confidence of it, and it's really just trusting my brakes that I didn't trust before. Yeah. On the couple of rides that we've done to Wyoming, and then in between, was that Ant Hill?
Ant Flats.
Ant Flats, yeah.
Yep.
It's just the confidence and trust in my brakes.
Yeah, I think for me it's like my tires still. It's like I just don't fully. It's like especially like if we're doing a counterbalance turn. Yeah. And sure enough, like when my front tire slipped, I was like, I don't trust my tires.
Got to get a more aggressive tire.
I do.
I'm going to get the ones I get.
I'm going to. I'm going to get them.
But for me, it was basically like the confidence, but I think the braking is also one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
That first hill, the 2 times we've gone down that initial hill, still kind of like freaked me out a little bit because I'm like, I'm gonna drop this damn bike again because
flashbacks.
Yeah, exactly. It's like almost a mental block because even when we did the Ant Flats, it was like that slight little hill. It wasn't even steep, but I was like, like instantly locked up because that's all I could think about. Yeah. Luckily, I was fine, but I was like, calm down, just relax, calm the fuck down, and like
we saw
around the turn.
We saw hills are tricky because there was that guy who didn't drop his bike once in the class.
The Himalaya, wasn't it?
The guy in the Himalaya, he went to leave and he just his bike like went up and over.
Yeah. So going up hills, I have zero problems. I'm going up. I can see where I'm going.
I get worried. I start to get worried when I feel like I'm going too slow.
Yeah.
And for it's uphill. Like, oh no, I'm going to start losing traction. I'm going to start spinning, and then I'm going to stop, and then my legs are too short. And I'm not going to be able to pick the bike up.
That's why I like my bikes. If I'm in second gear going up a hill, I start to slow down.
Torque Nation over there.
Just drop it into first, and I got all the torque.
I remember like me and you couple of years ago, back when I still had my Honda. Yeah. We did the same Ant Flats road, and we went right instead of left. Me and you went left. Yeah. Mitch and I, we went right, and it just turns to dirt. Basically, you can take a road all the way up to Snow Basin. From
turns a pretty steep hill.
It was a pretty steep hill. And it was like kind of big, chunky, like loose rocks. I don't know how the hell I got my little Honda up there, but it didn't drop it. It went up fine.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, it wasn't just big chunky rocks. It was like big chunks of earth that were like tore up by like tractor wheels or something.
Yeah.
And so it was very technical getting over.
Somehow we made it up there.
Yeah, his bike made it up. For me, it's like I'm just going up, not knowing what the hell I'm doing. But that bike,
I'm just pushing that thing. Just
See, I prefer to not have those moments. So that's why I was like getting this class knocked out within the first 2 months, really, that I own the bike.
That's good.
Yeah,
it's the smartest.
Exactly what I wanted. So it worked out.
Would you guys like take their like more advanced?
Oh, the minute I can afford it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The biggest one I want to do is like the hill descent and the hill like ascent ones.
Which I think is they consider that they're like level 2.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And that's the one because I'm like the hills is what makes me the most nervous, and that's the one I want to be good at riding.
According to their Instagram, the Grit Moto Instagram handle too is like they have they put in like some like rocks with mud and stuff.
I saw that. I think that was there when we were there, but it just wasn't wetted.
Oh, okay, so they wet it. Yeah.
It looked terrifying.
It does look kind of...
I also noticed they had like that one strip that was just like really soft sand.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's like to get stuck in it, basically get your bike out.
Yeah, what's out there in the West Desert is that.
See, I would, the minute I can afford it, I would love to. If all three of us went to that again.
Yep.
Maybe next year.
Next year, I think that's what they were talking about. They were going to come back. Sean, Louise were going to come back.
Well, even if it's just like the same level what they taught this year, just to go back for
refresher.
Like,
I do the same thing for snowboarding stuff.
Yeah.
Like for my avalanche stuff, I do refreshers every year.
Yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat.
I think with anything, but with motorcycling, like just that constant practice.
Yeah,
because when you're out riding, you're not really thinking about that, and like even for the military, we're required to take refreshers every 5 years. So there's something behind it. You know?
It's just to keep your brain working and like doing the things properly instead of
because you get the bad habits.
Exactly. It's to shed those bad habits. I'm more than happy to do like another class up there. I think that's.
I want to start doing rooster tails, just spinning that wheel through turns and stuff.
I know, that'd be so fun.
That's my next thing.
Yeah. And we forgot to mention this at the start. We're all going on a trip to Tahoe.
That's in what, 3 weeks?
3 weeks, basically from now.
Yeah, we haven't even. Yeah.
We need to figure out the other half.
We need to figure out the second half of the trip. But for all three of us, this is going to be the longest motorcycle trip any of us have done. We're going to be gone a whole week, basically.
I still haven't figured out what the overall mileage we're going to be doing, but it's going to be up there.
It's going to be like, I think...
Maybe 3,000?
I don't know if it's... it could be. It could be a pretty
close.
Bit. Yeah.
I don't know how much we're planning on doing on dirt, but...
I wanted to try some off-road
The thing I'm worried about is we get out there, one of us crash and have a problem with the bike, and then we have to get back.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing where... if it's like... easy off-road, kind of what we did in Colorado.
If we got, I want to find if we can find that around Tahoe.
If we got fire trails, I'm all about it. But anything more technical, I kind of don't really want.
Give me an easy forest road.
Exactly,
I'll be happy.
I'm totally down for that. And I remember like looking on Google Maps and stuff. There's a lot of like even paved, just really small, like almost half paved roads and stuff around. Like I can handle that.
If we can find stuff that's kind of like the cottonwoods and stuff out here, I'm down for it.
I'm sure we'll find. I'm sure we'll be okay.
Yeah. But we're all excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's pretty much
so
everything we have to talk about.
I guess just for that trip, I'm guessing they can probably expect another delay in an episode.
We might have another delay. Yeah. I think we're going to try to put out one more this month before we leave.
I think so.
Maybe talking about trip
coming
prep.
up quick.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about the trip after. Probably have Emerson back on.
I'll tell you how I dropped my bike again.
That's if he wants to come back.
Really stupid.
We go on the trip and everyone's like, "Fuck you guys."
Yeah. God, this was the worst decision ever.
Why didn't even come though?
I'll sell my bike.
I didn't even want this bike anymore.
I don't even want an ADV bike. Look at these nerds.
I'm gonna go back destroying my back.
But anyways, that's the episode. Emerson, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's been great to have you as our first guest here. So thanks so much for sharing your experience with both your riding career, or your motorcycle riding, and then
new adventures.
New adventures
with the adventure bike.
Yeah. Come share them with us sometime.
And thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Take care.
Cool.
Oh my God, it wasn't